Good morning, everybody. It's Jim with Shiloh Kahal. It's been on my heart for a little bit to try to identify what it is that we're doing. I know that many of our friends and people who know us are wondering about who we are, what we're doing, and, have they gone off the deep end? Are they crazy? Well, I think it's safe to say that I still identify with the concepts of Christianity. What is Christianity? It's a follower of Christ. Well, of course. Now, we're no longer calling Yahushua Christ. There are reasons why we don't really follow the Greek names and references to him. We're calling him Messiah more than Christ and things of that nature. There are terms out there that I prefer, like Nazarenes and Nazarim and Nazarenes, but really none of it really matters because we're all in this together with Yahushua. But, part of this whole discussion comes back to, or the reason that things changed for us is we've grown into this further identity that as a church, as a separate body, as some body following after Yahushua, as a church, we're not alone. We don't have this separate and distinct new thing. What we've discovered is that we, as the church, as Gentiles, as the lost tribe, whatever we are simply joining with Israel. That's a big revelation to understand that Israel did not come to an end. The entire story of Israel spans all the old writings, but it also spans all the new writings. It spans all the extra writings, parabiblical writings that the church is segregating as apocryphal writings. So this identity with Israel is key. But when you then move into the identity of Israel, it's hard not to understand that, wait a minute, but what about all these laws that they had? What about all these things going on with the law of Moses, which I just read the other day it shouldn't even be called law. It's the Torah of Yahweh. It's the Torah of Moses. It's the instructions. It's the way of Yahweh. To call it a law conjures things. And in the teachings of the church, it certainly, in churchdom, it has been, it conjures things. When you say law, you immediately get a response from people. It's, no, we're free from the law and we're not going to be subject to the law. Why do you want to go back? Well, there are all kinds of things that churchdom has taught us to react to related to law. But as soon as you realize that, wait, I'm not this separate and distinct, free from all law and under grace church. Wait, I belong to Israel. Israel had a whole set, they got a whole history. They got a whole covenant, a whole writing associated with them. So when you go back, though, that part of the instructions to them involved this whole set of things related at Mount Sinai that Moses gave, that we tend to call the law of Moses, but it's the Torah of Yahweh. You do a little study, you learn that that is not the beginning of Torah. Torah actually began all the way at the very beginning with Adam. He had Torah. He had instruction. Don't go eat from, eat of all the trees, but that one, don't go eat of that one. That was Torah. But he violated it and took us all down this path. But Abraham, that's why he was valued, because amongst all the people, we had Adam's born, and then within 1600 years, sin takes over the whole world. It has to be destroyed. Only Noah is found righteous in the midst of that, except for Enoch was also a man of righteousness. So Enoch and Noah were righteous, and I'm sure in their family there were other righteous people, but those are the two of note. Noah is the one that's brought through the flood. They come through the flood, and almost immediately after the flood, through his sons and daughters and the people, sin takes over again. So Noah was righteous, but nobody else stayed that way, and it went bad. So out of the people, then again, Yahuwah Elohim chose one man who had turned his heart to Yahweh. And Yahweh began to speak to Abraham. And Abraham had the writings. There's a whole history, and I can't go into it, or I'm hoping to keep this one fairly short. But there's a reason why Yahweh chose Abraham, and it had to do with his obedience. And Abraham had commands and things that he was following, that he was obedient to, which obviously predates Moses. And that's what Yahweh found. So, Abraham loved Yahweh, and that was expressed through his obedience to commands and other things. But here, now that we've begun to identify with this, there are groups of this. You will have the Hebrew roots movements and sacred name movements, and you can get into movements. In many respects, this movement into this identity as Israel has become synonymous with the Torah movement and Torah groups. So you hear people being referenced as Torah groups, as Torah heads, as Torah Hebrew roots, all kinds of things that are all associated with Torah. And I was listening the other day to somebody referencing us as a Torah group, and I'm just thinking, wow, when I first became aware of this and I started looking at, I was Torah focused because it was so new to me. I had so much, and I still have so much to learn with regard to the ways of Yahweh as expressed in that Torah. And I want to be obedient to him, but I live in a culture removed, in a time removed, and I've got a lot to learn. And it's so hard to try to do all of that. And some of it's not, you got to learn what's even meant for you. Okay, so there's a lot of work to do on this, but as I began to share with certain people that, hey, we've discovered that we are Israel. We've discovered that we're not the church. We're the church, but we're the church of Israel. We are the assembled ones, the gathered, called out ones, assembled ones of Israel, not the gathered out, assembled ones of some separate body called the church. No. We've joined Israel. That's a big deal. That is a huge, if you're a Christian and you don't understand that, that's kind of a big, epiphany. That's a big change. That really should turn your ideas of what you're called to do and what you've even been receiving through the new writings. It should call into question and redefinition, reexamination of these scriptures you've been reading all your life through the filter of churchdom and their doctrines, being told what this means here, this means that, this means that. And it doesn't mean that. It means this back here in the old covenant. You begin to realize that stuff. Well, so I'm belaboring this, and I don't mean to. I'm saying that while initially the focus was on Torah, I'm realizing as groups that I would be lumped in with are being called Torah groups or Torah centric groups. I don't think that's how I want to identify myself. I think I want to identify myself as a fellow citizen of Israel. That's it. Covenant people. I'm either a member. I could be a child of Abraham. I could be one of the lost generations, the lost sheep of Abraham over here in America. Bloodline of Abraham. I could be. That would make me a lost sheep. That would give me some things within the promises of Abraham related to his bloodlines. But it's immaterial because whether I am, bloodline of Abraham or truly Gentile, no blood of Abraham, not the blood of Abraham, I still, through Jesus, I've been given access to what? To the promises, to the covenant. So I'm not saved as a Gentile unto this new thing. No, I am saved by Yahushua as a Gentile to join the covenant people. And that's what we are. We're the covenant people. We are fellow citizens of Israel. Now let me go and explain a little bit through some scriptures here. Okay, so I'm in Ephesians here, and let me just, before I get started here, let me just restate what I said. Rather than identify myself and focus my group and me as Torah observant, Torah followers, Torah focused people, I want to be identified not as Torah centric, not as Torah focused, but as citizenship focused, covenant focused. What matters is that we've joined Israel. We have joined them in everything. We've joined them in citizenship. We've joined them in the covenant and the covenant promises that makes us heirs together with them in all the promises. So all the promises made to them are now made to us. We get everything that was promised to them in the old writings, and that's what matters. Now, as a citizen of Israel, we have responsibilities. You can't, just like you join the United States, you can't just do whatever you want. You got to follow the laws of the land and the ways of the land. Well, Yahuwah, who created Israel and gave us the covenants, has laid down the rules that were to be operating in, and to disobey those rules is to disrespect him and not love him. To obey them and follow them and make the serious effort to do them is respect for him, love for him, that kind of thing. That's how I want to work with Torah. Yes, we need to observe what Torah is for us. We need to observe all the commands, all the Torah, not just the law of what's been identified as the law of Moses, but all of the commands that go before the time of Israel and Moshe, and the times that might have followed into Messiah. Although I think most of the things we find when Messiah comes is really just, it's not new rules, new ways. It is the ways that he's identified being explained and expounded upon. But even if it is new, anything that's new, guess what that is? Torah. We follow it because we are members of, if Yahushua said to do it, if Yahuwah says to do it, you do it. It's Torah now. So that's the essence of it. So let me I'm going to Ephesians, and I'm going to try to go through this quickly. Well, I don't want to read all of Ephesians. As wonderful as it is, identifying them as, hey, welcome in type thing. What I do want to focus on here in chapter 1 is verse 18 for a moment, only because they, as Gentiles, as not people of Israel, who have now been brought to Israel through Yahushua, who is now the sovereign of Israel. He's the king of Israel. He didn't go create something new that he was going to be king of. No, he came to redeem Israel and become the king of Israel. He's now the king of Israel. So these Gentiles have come to the kingdom of Israel. You've come to the sovereign of Israel and received pardon through the sovereign of Israel. This is what the Gentiles, these Ephesians, have received. So these Ephesians, the eyes of their understanding has been enlightened, so that they know what is the expectation of his calling, and what are the riches of the esteem of inheritance in the qodeshim. Now, qodeshim is the English word for the Hebrew word, qodeshim, set apart ones. If you go to the scriptures, they'll use the set apart ones, but at the end, the Yah scriptures, the Hallelujah scriptures that we're working from, has chosen to remove set apart that we would see in the scriptures and reintroduce qodeshim, because they've got their reasons. But I actually like qodeshim because it is such a wonderful word that captures the essence of it. We are the set apart ones. How else does that get identified? qodeshim. It'd be the people of God. It'd be the saints. It'd be the chosen. It'd be the house of, everything that can be associated with something that Yahuwah, Elohim, has taken and set apart for himself. That's kodesh. That's kodeshim. To be kodeshim is to be the one that is to be set apart. To kodash is to set apart. So anyway, qodeshim is that could have been, that could have been Israel. It could have been the saints. It could have been the house. It could have been all kinds of things, but it's whatever has been separated unto Yahweh. So the Ephesians, their understanding was enlightened so that they would know the expectation of his, Elohim's calling, and what are the riches of the esteem of the inheritance in the qodeshim. And who are the qodeshim in this moment? The qodeshim is, let me just go there now. I'm going to quickly go to the extra writings. And let me say I'm going to Jubilees, which I acknowledge as scripture. Because I believe if you get into the whole history of what Qumran is and the Dead Sea Scrolls, it is not this esoterical Essene group that is being used to discredit what that was. I'm confident that was the compound of the Zadokite priesthood and where they were exiled to effectively and where they set up their base of operation once they were deposed from the temple, where they should have been still leading. The high priest should have been from the sons of Zadok, the lines of Aaron. So what we had was, a Zadokite priesthood compound, and their writings and what they accumulated as scriptures could be much more, I think, is much more reliable as this idea of a canon. Those scriptures that would be considered scripture by the authorities. And the Zadokite priesthood is more of an authority to me than the Pharisees are, than the later Catholic Church was for Nicaea and, the Carthage councils and all those things that decided upon what would be scriptures for us. So I'm going to go to Jubilees because I think when you know what we're talking about, to know what this qodeshim is, you have to go all the way back to one of the early writings where this is chapter, 7? Yeah, no, I'm in 2. I'm sorry. I came back to 2. This is where in chapter 2, Yahweh through his messengers is sharing through Moshe to us. And he said to us, here, let me go up to 18. And all the messengers of the presence, which is a particular class of angel, and all the messengers of the Kodeshah, which are the set apart ones, those that are set apart. So these are the angels, these ministers. So let me go back up here. The messengers, the angels of the presence. I'm pretty confident the presence is, these guys are ministering in the presence of Yahuwah. And then you have the messengers of the Kodeshah. These are the ministers, the angels who are charged with keeping and protecting and overseeing everything that has been set apart for Yahuwah, which would be us. This is us. We are the Kodeshah. Israel is the Kodesh, the Kodeshah. And these two great classes of what? Messengers. The messengers, the angels who are keeping and ministering to Yahweh in his presence, Elohim in their presence, and the messengers who are ministering to the Kodeshah, which is us. He has hidden us to guard the Shabbat, which is the Sabbath, with him in the Shemayim, which is the heaven, and on earth. So what are we saying in verse 18 of chapter 2 here? All the messengers, and I'm going to reread it because I moved around too much there, but let me just read it now in uniformity. And all the messengers of the presence and all the messengers of Kodeshah, these two great classes, he has hidden us to guard the Shabbat with him in the Shemayim and on earth. So the angels are guarding the Shabbat because the Shabbat is much bigger than Israel. It goes all the way back to the creation and maybe even prior to creation of the earth anyway. But these messengers, they are guarding the Shabbat with him in the heavens, Shemayim, and on earth. So the Shabbat is supposed to be guarded and kept in the heavens where it is still being kept, but it's also supposed to be getting kept on earth, which is part of the whole problem that the church has removed us from. The basics of what even Shabbat is. It's hard enough to learn what the Shabbat is and what our responsibilities are, but we should at least know to start on the seventh day and to keep it separate. Okay, but then let's go on to verse 19. And he said to us, the messengers, see, I shall separate unto myself a people from among all the peoples, and they shall guard the Sabbath day, and I shall kadosh them unto myself as my people, and shall barak them, as I have kadosh the Sabbath day and kadosh it unto myself, even so I shall barak them, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from among all that I have seen, and have written him down as my firstborn son, and have qodeshed him unto myself forever and ever. And I shall teach them the Shabbat day, that they may guard the Shabbat thereon from all work. So what is happening here? First of all, we could have said Kodesh, I shall Kodash unto myself. I shall Kodash unto myself. Maybe that's what should have been word used there, because that's what that is. I don't know why they use separate. Okay. I'm sure it's just in the translators as they're trying to pull words out. They just missed this one, because it really should be, see, I shall Kadash unto myself a people from among all the peoples. So this is, if you will follow the history, you've got Noah has come off the boat, and he remained righteous. Shem remained righteous. Everybody else did not so much. And so sin took over the world, and it became bad. And then he being Yahweh is telling the messenger, see, I shall separate unto myself a people from among all the people. So what is his intent? Yahweh says to the messengers, I'm going to choose a people group, of all the peoples that are out there, I'm going to take one. I'm going to kadosh it. I'm going to separate it unto myself. And this will be the focus of my work, the focus of my attention, the focus of earth. When you get into all the parabiblical writings, you begin to realize how much this earth is designed for the covenant people. The world is for the covenant people. The world isn't the large system, the cosmos involving all of the things going on with Satan, because Satan's the god of this world. But the world that he died for is the world that he has made for his qodeshim. That's the world that he died for, spoken of in 2nd Esdras. Okay, so he's separating for himself a people. So he's going to separate one people from among all the peoples. And what are they charged with? This is how big a deal the Sabbath day is. First of all, they're keeping the Sabbath with him in heaven, but he's charging this one people to guard the Sabbath day. And I shall kadosh them unto myself as my people, and shall barak them. So their primary charges, maybe not primary, but clearly the first charge he's mentioning is they shall guard the Sabbath day. You'll see elsewhere that Sabbath day, those who are keeping it, that is a sign, just like a covenant. The circumcision is a sign of the covenant that you're in, this covenant, the separated people. If you're keeping the Sabbath day, that is a sign that you are amongst these Kodash people, these Kodeshim that have been separated. And you'll see it's called Israel. That's a sign, just like the circumcision is the sign. So going to the dispute in Galatia, are you going to be justified? You keep this, you go get yourself circumcised, that saves you? No. If you go get circumcised without understanding all of the covenant, you're wasting your time. You're just mutilating flesh, and that's all you're doing. So if you're not a believer, if you're not a believer, if you're not Kodesh, if you're not doing the things, if you're not following hard after Yahuwah and the Elohim, then all the law keeping you're doing, all of the circumcision you're doing is a waste of time. It will not save you. Only faith and belief in Elohim, in Yahuwah, in Yahushua will land you amongst the Kodesh people. Now, once you are among those Kodesh people, once you are amongst the chosen, amongst those elect, if you go up a little bit in first of Ephesians, back on the next page, you see that it's the elect from the beginning. He knew all along who would become these Kodesh people. So, while you're not going to be saved by keeping circumcision, and if you are trying to be saved by keeping circumcision, you're missing everything. It's just you just don't understand. You're missing the point. You need to retool and rethink how you're thinking. But once you are amongst these chosen people, lots of things. You keep all Torah, that's a sign. But the two basics here would be the Sabbath day. You're keeping the Sabbath day. That's a sign that you are in covenant. This particular covenant, the promised covenant, the covenant that Yahushua comes to, that is a sign that you're in that covenant versus some other covenant that's being made that I'm going to say that churchdom is doing today. What they're offering up is not this same qodeshim, because they're not operating, they're not seeing, they're not even trying to meet the signs, to do the signs, be the signs of this Kodesh group. And this Kodesh group is the Kodesh group to which the Messiah came. This is the Kodesh group to which Yahushua came. Not a separate and distinct group who do not keep the Shabbat, and who do not keep circumcision. And do you have to go get circumcised? Well, I don't know. That's a question like, what comes first, chicken or the egg? Chicken or the egg. If you love him, you will get circumcised. So it's a moot point. But if you go get circumcised without loving him, you're wasting your time. And loving him in the sense of all that brings to you, following the commands, following his Torah, that kind of stuff. All right, I'm beating it too far. I'm sorry. So I shall kadosh them unto myself as my people, and shall barak them. So he's going to separate this particular group, one group, as my people, and shall bless them. That's what barak means. As I have kadosh the Sabbath day, meaning he set it apart amongst all the days. This is what's important to him. He set it apart and kadosh it unto myself. Even so I shall barak them, bless them, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. I'm going to take a quick opportunity. This was the opportunity before them when they came out of Mitzrayim, which is Egypt. When they came out of there, and Moses is their leader, and they go up into the two mountains, and it's, Ebal, I'm not going to, Gershom and Ebal, I believe, are the two mountains. It doesn't really matter. They go on the two sides of the mountains. They repeat the blessings and they repeat the curses. And in the middle, they stand in between because they get to choose. And what did they choose? They chose the cursing because they chose not to follow Yahweh. Had they followed, like on Ebal, I believe that was right, mountain. But had they chosen to follow, they would be a wonderful city today. They would be it still wouldn't be quite the promises because of the flesh that we inherited from Adam. And it would still probably need the incorruptible flesh that is coming to us. But it would be operating in the Barakoth, the blessings of Yahweh, had we stayed their people. Now, because even though they were chosen, and they are still his people, but they're not operating as, I mean, if you want to go to any of my videos where I'm talking about, the scattering and the regathering, the promised regathering, this is when everything is restored. This is the resurrection. And this is when you will see this language over and over again. They shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. Well, in this world today, in Israel, was Israel their people and Elohim Yahweh their Elohim? Well, yes, but not really, because as much as he kept his side of the covenant, they didn't keep their side of the covenant. So they were never really operated in this relationship where my people, I'm their Elohim. But that's coming. That's the promise. That's what we're talking about. That's part of the inheritance that we have, because that's the promise to Israel, that they will be redeemed. They will be regathered. They will be resurrected into their land. And their land is the new Jerusalem. Okay. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob. So who are these people that he just set apart in Kadosh? Well, it's Jacob. This is the Yah scripture. So this would be Jacob. If we were reading in the other translations, you'd be seeing Jacob here. But I have chosen the seed of Jacob from among all that I have seen, and have written him down as my firstborn son. Okay, so why Jacob? Why do they say Jacob and not Abraham? It's because Abraham, although Abraham was the original, it's from him that, he's the reason that they're chosen, because of his obedience and his love for Yahweh. But he has two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And then, so the promise does not follow Ishmael, it follows Isaac. So that's why we haven't yet. So I'll just keep going. So then Isaac, the promises, the Kodesh people are following not Ishmael, but Isaac. And then once we get to Isaac, we have Esau and Jacob. So the covenant does not follow Esau. It follows Jacob. And so that's why we get to Jacob. Once we get to Jacob, now it's following all of Jacob's sons. All 12 of them, every one of them. So that's why we say, I have chosen the seed of Jacob instead of Abraham or Isaac. It's because there are seed of Abraham and Isaac that are not chosen. They are counted amongst the Gentiles. It is the seed that will follow Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. These are the chosen. This would be the seed that was part of this whole chosen people thing. Now it's been even in the days of Moses, it wasn't just the seed of Jacob, because you had the mixed multitudes, you had the Gentiles who could choose to join. But just like today, I mean, it's the same thing. If you had a Gentile who wanted to come into the land and share in the citizenship and the covenant and the promises and all the benefits, okay, you could. But when you come in, you can't come in and act like you did. You can't abide by the rules that you came from. No, you come in and you abide and you operate and you take on all the characteristics of the land to which you are choosing citizenship. So even though you're not blood, you're not that kind of seed, not physical seed, blood seed, you are spiritual seed. So you remain the seed of Jacob, even though, okay, so this gets a little larger, and I'm just spreading this out too long. I'm so sorry. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob, and I'm going to include the spiritual seed of Jacob among all that I have seen, and I've written him down as my firstborn son, and have qodeshim unto myself forever and ever. And I shall teach them the Sabbath day, that they may guard the Shabbat and thereon. So the point of this, the real point, I belabored it here, but the real point of it is, this is what you want to be a part of. If you're not a part of this, kodesh them, a separated people, I will separate myself unto. If you're not part of this separated people, this kodeshim up here, if this is not what you're part of, then you're not part of Yahuwah. You're not part of the promises. You're not a part of salvation. You're not a part of the promises. If you really want to identify with Christianity, you've got to go find out what Christianity is identifying with, what Christ, what Messiah, what Yahushua is coming to, what he's coming to redeem. He's coming to redeem this separated, set apart qodeshim people who failed and fell and have now been scattered and judged. He's come to redeem them and call them back and make the way for them back to their Elohim in wholeness, back in wholeness. This is what Yahushua is all about. It is not going out and saving the Gentile nations with their own ways and their own holidays like Easter and Christmas. That's not what it's about. Okay, so let me go back to Ephesians, because that's what, when we're saying Ephesians, this is what Paul is telling the Ephesians who are Gentiles, that the eyes of your understanding have been enlightened, so that you know that what is the expectation of his, Elohim's calling, and what are the riches of the esteem of his inheritance in the qodeshim. So this inheritance in the qodeshim is the promise to that separated Kodesh people that we just read about in Jubilees, which is restoration of relationship, restoration and resurrection of the body and resurrection of the land, resurrection of the kingdom, because Israel failed as the kingdom on earth, but the kingdom is coming down, the kingdom of Israel. I mean, really, it's the reign of Elohim. It's the reign of Yahushua, but it is also the kingdom of Israel, because that's, maybe I'm going too far with that, but you get maybe another day thing. Okay, so let me go to 2 then, which is really where I'm focusing on. So here we are again. Where does it say? Let me go quickly find. Give me just a second here. Okay, so sorry about that. So I'm in Ephesians chapter 2, and I was looking for verse 11 here. Therefore remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which are the group of people who are, what would that be? The Pharisees and all these people that are, they're just really caught up in their circumcision when they really should be caught up in really extolling their relationship, their citizenship. But instead they're extolling their circumcision and calling others who aren't circumcised, the Gentiles, the uncircumcision. Okay. But that's a red herring. It's a shiny object. It's a distraction from what's really at hand. Because what's important though is that the Gentiles were, at that time, they were without Mashiach. They were without the Messiah. They were without membership. They were not part of this group of people here. They were not part of it. They were outside of that. So that at that time you were without Mashiach, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, this group people, this Jacob. This Yisrael is Jacob, and that is this group here, the chosen, the seed of Jacob. So you are outside of this, Mr. Gentile. You're outside of this grouping of Jacob. So you are outside, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise. So going back up to what we just read, the expectations of the inheritance. So you are excluded from the citizenship of Israel, that qodeshim people, that set apart people, and strangers from that group of people's covenants of promises, having no expectation and without Elohim in the world. You need to understand, and I'm beating this to death, I'm sorry, but, to that group of people, there are covenants of promises. There are promises forthcoming. We have not seen the new covenant yet. We have not seen what has been promised. We are not living in, no church body, no church is living in the new covenant. The new covenant was bought and paid for by Yahushua at his crucifixion, at his death, at his sacrifice, bought and paid for. But its reality, when it comes, the new covenant comes when he does the second coming. So whatever the delay is with him coming is also the delay for the new covenant. But with that new covenant, with that new covenant, the new body, the new home, the new Mount Zion, the new Jerusalem, with all of that, those are the promises of the covenant, to which all Gentiles were excluded from. I was excluded from that. And even if I was a blood member of the seed of Abraham, I still would have probably been excluded from it. I'm confident excluded from it because I wouldn't have known and I wouldn't have been pursuing Yahweh. Another whole topic, I suppose. But now in Mashiach Yahushua, which is Messiah Yahushua, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of HaMashiach. So you were separated, but now through Yahushua, the Gentiles were brought into the relationship, which we'll read throughout Isaiah. We'll read Levi, the Testament of Levi, and other things where the Gentiles, when Mashiach came, it was open, not just a little, it was opened up a lot to the Gentiles to come and join. Not to sign on to Jesus and stay in your own gig. It was an invitation to sign up, even though you're not part of, you were never invited before, you're invited now. And, you can leave your gig and come join us with our Messiah Yahushua. So you are called into this citizenship. Okay. So you were once far off, have been brought near by the blood of HaMashiach, for he is our peace, who has made us both one, and having broken down the partition of the barrier. Partition of the barrier between who? Israel and Gentiles? I think maybe that's probably what he's talking about. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the laws of the dogma, commands and dogma. That's not the law of Moses. This is a law of commands and dogma, which is, man-made things that, that's another whole topic, which I think I've either addressed or will be planning to address in a video. But from the two, they've made, one renewed man from the two. So basically everybody's part of this, has the chance, everybody who is elect has this chance to be, we're all together in this one body, the qodeshim, at this point in time. And to completely restore to favor both of them unto Elohim into one body through the stake, having destroyed the enmity between the two by the stake. And having come, he brought as good news, peace to you who were far off and peace to those near, those who were strangers of the covenant and those who were not strangers of the covenant. There is now peace, which this pretty much has to be, even no matter how we interpret this, the law of commands and dogma and the idea that they've been abolished. What we have to, it all makes it pretty clear. But it wasn't just in this passage. There's a passage up here in 1 where it talks about them being brought together too. The whole concept of this has to do with the two people groups being brought together in one, just like that's what Peter's vision was, with the sheets and the animals. But the real essence is not whether or not the commands were abolished. No, that's not what this is all about. And it's not even the commands of Moses or Yahweh. Instead, it's the enmity between the two people groups, those who were far off, the Gentiles, and those who were near. Because through him, now both groups, Gentiles and Israel, have access to the Father by one Ruah. And this is the essence of what I'm trying to say. So then, you are no longer strangers and foreigners to the covenant promises, but fellow citizens with the qodeshim. And who's the qodeshim? Here's the qodeshim, the chosen seed of Yaakov, this people group. This is the qodeshim. So now you have been brought into fellow citizenship with the qodeshim and members of the household of Elohim, having been built upon the foundation of the emissaries and the Nebiim, Yahushua HaMashiach himself being the cornerstone. So in churchdom, as they're teaching you other things, you've got to understand that you're being brought into this citizenship that was built on the prophets and the emissaries, which would be the apostles, those who have seen, the witnesses and the prophets, and Yahushua the Messiah himself being the cornerstone. So all of this is what was built before, that you and me, if you're going to be considered part of this church, part of this qodeshim, part of the elect, part of the saints, whatever word you want to use, then you must identify with this citizenship with the qodeshim that was built upon the Nebiim and emissaries. So you need to go back to what this is. If you really want to be a part of this and you're going to do your homework, which we're called to do, because he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, not those who sit around and do other things and aren't paying attention to what he's commanded them. He's got a way that he wants us to do and be, and he's told us what that is. And if you don't care about it, then that's suggestive you don't care about him. So, really, once you realize that you're a part of Israel and that Israel has a covenant, but there's a covenant, part of that covenant is not just what Yahushua is going to be giving Israel, but part of that covenant, and the part that was broken way back when, is the part that we owe back. We're supposed to keep that covenant, and to keep that covenant, we are to do those commands, to do the commands of Yahweh. So our part of the covenant is to keep his ways, to keep his charges, to keep his testimonies, to keep his witnesses, to keep his right rulings, to keep his Torah, to keep any command he makes. All of that together is the Torah. If you want to call it the law, okay, let it trigger you into something, fine, do that if you want to, but that's not the essence of what this citizenship is or what this covenant is. The essence is covenant. So, just in summary, and I'll be done, I guess I would still call myself a Christian, although I would be like a natural, a follower of Yahushua. I'm glad to do that. I would still call myself at the church, of course, and I would call myself natural. I would still call myself Torah compliant, but I'm really kind of separating myself from the focus of the Torah, because what I really am saying is, what I'm really trying to identify with is having joined and become part of the covenant with these qodeshim, set apart people. This is what I've joined. This is what I want to be identified with. So when I think of my grouping, my doctrinal positions that I'm developing as I'm studying and learning, I want to be focused not as a Torah head, not as a Torah group, not a Torah. I want to identify as a fellow citizen of Israel, a fellow partaker of the covenant. I want to be a covenant group. I want to be a citizen of Israel. I want to be an heir of Israel. This is how I want to identify myself, as a fellow citizen with Israel, a fellow citizen of Israel, a fellow sharer in the covenants, the covenant promises, the covenant to and from Israel. So I hope I was able to make that clear, and it went a little longer than I'd hoped for. So thank you for your patience, and may it be Baruch.